Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades, friends, people I don't like, um, I am I am always asking the question, when did we end racism? If racism isn't so bad and these democratic mayors and democratic police chiefs don't have to experience racism and don't have to experience the pressures of racism from higher ranking officers and danger for their lives, why are we still going through this? Somebody enlighten me in the comments. Somebody tell me, when did the magical evil of racism, the horrors of when did this end? Because it is 2023 and it looks like these dudes are having a super comeback. A black mayor in North Carolina is dealing with the KKK. Now, in all honesty, this is a very small town. We'll look into that a little bit later. But how is it that the entire weight of the federal government hasn't descended upon these people? Let's watch. We will discuss. Jeez.
Tonight, the governor is responding after the mayor of Halifax County town of Enfield asked him to declare a state of emergency. It comes after Mondale Robinson says racist threats have been sent to him and other residents since he took down the town's Confederate monument. WRAL's Keenan Willard is at the site where that monument once stood. What exactly is the mayor asking for, Keenan?
Well, Deborah, he's calling for Governor Cooper to stand right here in this spot and to denounce what he's calling a threat of white supremacist violence in this community. Now, the response that we got from the governor's office today didn't seem to indicate whether he'd be willing to do that.
These are the actors who cried.
In a press conference at Town Hall, the Enfield mayor called for an investigation into racist threats.
My name is Mayor Mondale Robinson.
Mondale Robinson says in the weeks since he destroyed the town's Confederate monument, he's received multiple emails with racist threats directed towards him. He also says community members have found racist messages in their yards throughout town.
And as we stand firm on our constitutional rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, we need our governor to lock arms with this community, ensuring that our solemn way of life isn't interrupted by white supremacists.
Last month, the Enfield Town Council voted to remove the structure, which began as a Confederate monument but later memorialized veterans of other wars as well.
Yes, sir.
6 days later, Robinson filmed the destruction of the monument with a bulldozer.
Death to the Confederacy around here.
The videos drew anger from some Enfield residents. The next day, the Enfield police chief and Halifax DA asked the SBI to investigate the monument's destruction. Today, WRAL has learned Police Chief James Ayers is resigning from his position next week. When asked why, he declined to respond.
He gets elected. Racists respond by littering the entire town with racist flyers and papers. The town votes to remove a Confederate statue. And then the black police chief resigns and retires after he calls on an investigation for this brother to be investigated by the SBI, which is a local state law enforcement bureau in North Carolina. Guys, why is this happening to this man in 2023? You know, I like to center this channel around black issues and the betterment of black people and informing black people about what's going on in the country and about what political issues and what foreign policy even that you could possibly be concerned about that could affect you at some point, internally, externally, from afar. It doesn't matter. If it could potentially affect you, I want you to know. And we're gonna get into Rashad Richey's interview. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have seen this. Shout out to big bro Rashad Richey. Like, that dude, oh my god, he is a machine. You feel me? That brother constantly brings the heat. Anyways, we gonna get back to this. I'm just so disappointed because, like, every black person in the country should be talking about this right now.
The SBI says it's continuing to investigate and will send its findings to the DA, who could pursue criminal charges. But Robinson says instead the focus needs to be on those racist messages that have emerged since. He's calling on the Department of Justice to formally investigate the source of the letters and asking Governor Cooper to declare a state of emergency for racism in their community.
The ideas of this country's constitution cannot be counted as valid as long as white supremacists are allowed, without consequence, to threaten the calm of everyday life for black people.
WRAL reached out to the governor's office for a response to Robinson's request for a visit and a declared state of emergency. In response, a spokesperson says only this: the source of these threats needs to be fully investigated.
Wow.
Now, we did get a stronger statement from the office of the Attorney General Josh Stein, who said while his office is not able to personally investigate this situation, it's out of their jurisdiction, he is calling for a full law enforcement investigation into these threats, and he says he is continuing to monitor the situation. Deborah?
Keenan Willard, live in Halifax County. Thank you, Keenan.
Okay. We're going to look at a couple of things. The first one being, how many, what does this town look like? It says here, earlier this month, the town commission voted to remove the statue. The mayor of Enfield, Mondale Robinson, volunteered to do it himself. He did it on Facebook Live with a hammer and a bulldozer. We're talking about removing this is an article of them talking about removing the statue. It attracted attention from well beyond Enfield. Naturally, he is in North Carolina. Robinson became the subject of a state investigation and target of racist hate mail. It also launched a new chapter in Robinson's life as the community organizer and activist. Good for him. Enfield past and present. Enfield has about 2,300 people, and 85% of them are black. It has the character of a lot. I can't read today. It has the character of a lot of small southern towns. There's a set of train tracks that runs right through the middle, with 2 or 3-story brick buildings on either side. Robinson is showing me around when this town was bustling in my mom and pop's childhood. The business would close at 9, and that's the point when black people had to leave, Robinson says. The fire department is right here. The whistle would go off, and black folks knew it was time for them to get from downtown, or they'd be sprayed with hoses or worse. It goes on to talk about how this one woman actually walked out of a store just to get hosed down. The Enfield population, 1,820 people. I think this is as of 2022. Enfield is the 31st most populated city in the state of North Carolina out of 773 cities. But watch out, Enfield, because Cedar Point with 1,800 people and going 100 people right behind. All right, whatever. That's not. I don't need to read that. The largest Enfield racial ethnic group are black people, 87% black, followed by 11% white, and Islander, 0.7%. In 2021, the median household of Enfield household was $22,000. Enfield's houses made slightly more than Pembroke households. This was 22, Silver City. So you have a small town of black people surrounded by, I'm assuming, other affluent neighborhoods and police forces terrorizing black people in a very small town because they're by themselves. How is this being allowed to go on? Merrick Garland, whoever the Republican governor is in that state, I'm pretty sure is a Republican governor, with that little teeny tiny sentence. I'm pretty sure it's a Republican legislature. How is everybody not outraged about this? This man is getting harassed on a daily basis. He has an interview with Dr. Rashad Richey that was very illuminating. Let's take a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. That's right, we covered it when it first happened. It was a breath of fresh air to the community at large. The good people of Enfield, North Carolina, elected Mayor Mondale Robinson because he's a true leader. He was put under investigation for doing exactly what you just saw. Those
calling out racism.
Charges never came because the investigation was dropped. But it got the attention of the KK clowns who decided to engage in a never came because the investigation exactly what you just saw. Those charges never came because the investigation was dropped. But it got the attention of the KK clowns who decided to engage in a fear and intimidation campaign. Here's one of their voicemails.
Greetings from the loyal white knights of the Ku Klux Klan. The Dumbest of the Month award goes to Mayor Mondale Robinson for calling on Governor Cooper to investigate white terror in Enfield, North Carolina. While the are running the crime rate sky high, shooting each other in gang violence, he wants to worry about Confederate monuments. If you're interested in joining the Klan, leave your name and number and we'll get back to you. Always remember, if it ain't white, it ain't right.
All right. Now,
let's just continue.
Fast forward. About a year ago, roughly, racist leaflets were distributed throughout the community of Enfield, North Carolina. The mayor requested an investigation, and a few days ago, he brought it back up, mentioned it again, that inaction from the state has been the response. Well, the state did act after he said that by letting him know he is under investigation for committing a crime against himself and his community. We have the mayor to talk about it. Mayor Mondale Robinson, good day, sir. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be with you. Thank you so much for having me and covering the story.
Absolutely, dear brother. You're a friend.
Let us remember how brave this brother is. Let us not forget how brave this man is. He's in a tiny, microscopic town in North Carolina, and he is clearly by himself. So, like, he comes on national TV to try to stop it anyway, because if it's going to happen to him, it's going to happen to somebody else. Somebody enlighten me, when did all of the racism stop? In the comments, please, let me know.
Friend, you're an ally. We support you. Let's go
100%.
into what happened just a few days ago
Just donate to the
when
campaign.
SBI agents showed up at your parents' home. Tell us the scene.
Yeah, so I was actually out of the state because I've not been staying at the house as often as I should because of, death threats and also the likelihood that something can happen to me and not have the support of state officials or local law enforcement either. So I've been, trying to keep my whereabouts up in wraps and traveling a lot. But what happened was my baby sister called me, my youngest sister called me and told me that the SBI agents were at my mother's house where she's staying right now. And I was like, great, they're investigating this racist leaflet. She's like, no, they're investigating you and I for throwing these leaflets. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I make her put me on speakerphone so I can hear what's going on and also interact with the agents. And that's when it got extremely interesting to me. And also I saw what was at play right now.
This is such an irony. For those who are...
These are the type of stories that black people tell each other growing up, that you hear from your parents and your grandparents, that when law enforcement does certain types of things, this is exactly why we don't trust the police. Because these things are happening, specifically because of our blackness.
Watching, they're not familiar with North Carolina bureaucracy. What does SBI stand for, and who are they?
So the SBI is to North Carolina what the FBI is to the federal government. It stands for the State Bureau of Investigation. It's the state's top cops, and they do all the investigations where they basically have jurisdiction over the entire state and choose what they can and can't investigate. These are the same organization that was investigating me for turning down the statue, and they were loud about that investigation. But when they dropped those charges, they didn't say anything to any of the media sources that they had previously spoken to, which is why some people thought that this topic that you were covering a couple of days ago, Doc, was an old topic, when in actuality, this is brand new. This is them now investigating me for throwing racist leaflets when we know this is not the case at all. And also the Loyal White Knights has a long history of behaving like this throughout the state. Just so happened, I'm a loud victim and the first victim ever to be charged or investigated for throwing these leaflets, even though, like I said, they've been doing this for more than a decade all across the state.
What a lucky guess, DJ. No. This is the type of stuff we have to hear about all the time. And because he's saying something, now people are starting to hear about it. Think about all the people who never said something because they were terrified.
Quite baffling. So according to the narrative, they have been investigating this for a year, and you just found out there was an investigation a few days ago, and the investigation is pointed toward you. My question is, if they've been investigating this for a year, did they contact you to get information about who could have done this?
Not only did they not contact me about who could have done this or follow up on the Loyal White Knights, who, like I said, has already behaved in this manner for the past decade or more throughout our state, they also haven't been to my office to pick up the evidence that I told them about a year ago when they were investigating me about the monument, the death threats, the racist emails, and also letters. They're still sitting on my desk. Not only that, they didn't even have a clue that the sheriff, the county sheriff, Halifax County Sheriff, had collected about 50 of these leaflets from people's yard the day that it happened. And I know that to be true because when I asked them in my mother's living room, have you all fingerprinted or investigated the leaflets? And he was like, oh, I got a picture of it, is what Officer or Agent White Chief said. And I said, a picture? Why haven't you picked up any? He was like, well, there's no need for us to go to people's house and try to pick them up. It's a year later, and that evidence will be contaminated. I said, people's house contaminated. The sheriff came that day and picked up 50 of them and turned them over the evidence. And I know that to be true because a simple Google search will show you the sheriff agent or deputy that actually picked them up, that said who went around to the houses in the local paper. So if you're doing an investigation for a year and you ain't found out what Google can tell you, don't sound like an investigation to me. And it's also extremely important that people remember that it's been a year that I've been calling for the state to act on this. I told the governor the day that this happened that he should call a state of emergency. And this is what the response is. Instead of a state of emergency, it's a state of investigating a black elected about racist white behavior.
So the leaflet.
Guys, this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable in America in 2023. This is unacceptable. This is disgusting. You have people like Vivek Ramaswamy who like shoots out platitudes about, Ayanna Presley's the great. What's it of the cake? Oh my God, I'm sorry. He's just such an unserious person. Oh. You know that ChatGPT jab that Christy gave him? It was really hilarious because it was the most accurate thing anybody could say. He's such a clown. Oh. There should be more coverage of this everywhere. But I think because there's so much racism surrounding that town that he can't even trust the local guy. He can't even go home. He can't trust the local law enforcement in his town. What does that say about what's going on right now?
They get tossed out, placed in residence yards, etc. You call for an investigation. The state does not respond appropriately. I have to ask you about the local authorities because you do have a local police force. What has the response been locally?
Definitely interesting.
I mean, listen, local media and local law enforcement, if I'm being honest, is kind of hostile towards me as well. If you remember, Doc, when you first covered the story, the SBI was in infield because the local police chief actually called them to investigate me and told them I committed a crime by turning down the statue, even though I didn't commit a crime and their investigation led to no charges, right? So, I mean, we can't expect to hear anything. We haven't seen the local papers in infield since the press conference when I called on the state of emergency. So when all the information, when all this noise died down about the white supremacy's behavior, we haven't seen the local paper to cover anything, as not even a town hall, let alone the threats that a mayor, a local elected, is receiving from white supremacists like this.
Let's talk about you and your sister because according to the update, she said we're both under investigation. Talk about that connection. Why would you and her be under investigation by the SBI?
Yeah, I mean, you saw a little smirk on my face when you said that because I'm one of 13 kids, right? And me and my baby sister are the only two that live in the town of Enfield. Apparently their evidence against my sister was her cell phone pinged off of a tower in Enfield. Well, of course it will. And if you check every day of every year, her cell phone pings off that same tower because she lives there. So this is the ridiculousness at which they can bring a case against me and my family. This is nothing more than political threats and silence and basically assassination. And I'm not trying to make myself into anybody that I'm not. I'm just saying I see what's happening here, and I tell everybody. It's no need to pretend that the invisible empire is gone or they don't exist. This is how they show up now, and they told me that in one of the threats. The invisible empire will watch you and interact with you in every aspect of your life. And we're seeing it right now. But what I told the SBI, and I stand by that, is I and every family member I have will be willing to stand and take a polygraph test. I just want them and whoever told them to investigate me to be willing to do the same thing.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Let's talk about the dynamic of you being an elected official. You are calling for an investigation. Typically, states have some type of reciprocal relationship with municipalities that would create almost an automatic response once it is determined by that leader, we need special assistance. We have something like that even in Georgia. Does anything like that exist for Enfield as it relates to the state?
So what he's asking them is simple. You the mayor. Why the fudge nuggets isn't anybody paying attention to what the hell is going on? Typically, people would just automatically be like, whoa, that's the mayor of a United States city. In North Carolina, it's not like in freaking some weird, quiet, like West Virginia. He ain't in like some quiet, teeny tiny railroad town with 11 people. He's the mayor. There's like 2,000 people there. Most of them are black. How is this not ringing alarms?
Yeah, I mean, the state has the power to call a state of emergency when threats like this happen. This is not a small thing for the Loyal White Knights, which is the nation's largest chapter of KKK, and also people who were responsible partially for the march on Charlottesville with the tiki torch where we saw someone get murdered. So this idea that I tore down a Confederate monument that means so much to the KKK's history, heritage, and then for the governor and all of the apparatus of the state of North Carolina to sit silent as if I'm blowing an air horn with no noise is ridiculous to me. This is deadly, not just for me, but also for the citizens and residents of the state, because it wasn't just elected officials in Charlottesville that was threatened. It was everybody, and we saw that when a citizen was killed.
And let's keep in mind, that town is predominantly black. We saw in the actual local report that they voted to take it down. This is a democratic process that apparently these racist I was about to call them more these racist Republicans, because I'm sure not one of them is a Democrat, even though I wouldn't be surprised. You know, Jesus Christ, Joe Manchin. He's from my state. But these people ain't even gonna respond and help this man. He's a freaking mayor. This entire town said no, get rid of the statue. And you're gonna investigate him?
Killed by someone with their vehicle.
Let's talk about the sheriff, because
elected officials in Charlottesville that was threatened. It was everybody, and we saw that when a citizen was killed by someone with their vehicle.
Let's talk about the sheriff, because according to the evidence collected, according to how it was collected, the sheriff should have retained that evidence. An investigation should have moved forward, but the SBI agents, they were unaware that the sheriff had collected some of these leaflets, had it in their custody. Has the sheriff spoken to you? Has there?
He's about to get into a lot of the details. We don't need to go down that hole with them. We already understand and know what it is that we are dealing with. Old-fashioned, dusty, crusty racism. A black police chief who called for an investigation against this man, because I guess nobody else could have done it except for the police chief at the time. Probably because he was the only black face in a high place. And then he probably said, listen, if I'm going to do this, I'm quitting. You're going to make me put an investigation? I quit. He probably didn't even do it. And you know the first thing that Republicans are going to say, well, he had a black police chief. He did it. He's the one who called for the investigation. He also immediately resigned. This is gross. This is insane. It should not be happening. It should not be happening. Shout out to Rashad Richey, man. Yo, if you haven't watched his show on TYT, you should go watch it. I mean, I love literally 99% of the stuff he does. I'm sure if I disagree with Rashad Richey, I'm like, oh man, that's great. It's like first time. Anyways, that's enough of that. Show's DjPinHD. Summer podcast. Thanks for watching, man. You guys, we're close. Six subscribers away. 6 subscribers away, baby. We're getting there. Appreciate you. See you on the next one.